Thank you, Peg. Welcome, everyone. Every single thing holds all things. This is a line from the awakening poem of Kongshi Daoren, an early 12th century Chinese laywoman whose name is recorded and in some centers around the world recited among the ancestors, one of Zen's female ancestors, female masters. Born Zhidong, Kongshi is the Buddhist name given when she was permitted as a laywoman, a Daoren or follower of the way, to study with Zen teachers of her time. Kongshi was a scholar, a poet, a woman of means who chose a simple life, a life of practice. As you'll hear in her story, that was perhaps one of the few choices that she was able to make for herself. Kongshi, her name means empty room. As I began to explore Kongshi, her experience and her teaching, it struck me that all the lives of the ancestors, like the koans, are love letters from the Dharma. Like Mu finding its way to Mu, becoming one with Mu, love, addressing love, inviting love to recognize itself, the perfect match, so to speak, to see what is here now, to see what you are. A longtime student recently reminded me of a poem that speaks to this homecoming of love and to Kongshi's Dharma. It's a verse by Emily Dickenson, known by its first line, that love is all there is. That love is all there is all we know of love. It is enough. The freight should be proportioned to the groove. That love is all there is all we know of love. It is enough. The freight should be proportioned to the groove. The freight that love bears can seem quite heavy, and yet proportioned to the groove, like Mu and Mu, love meeting its own freight. Empty room, or as Kongshi put it, every single thing holds all things. Proportioned to the groove. Last night, my partner and I watched a piece on PBS about a Washington-based organization called Vital Voices Global Partnership. It's an effort to establish and support women in recognized leadership roles around the world. Currently, the interview suggested there are about 20,000 such leaders across the globe. A tiny percentage. Fewer than 10% of statues and memorials in the world feature women. The old story still being told in 2022. The 8 winds don't blow favorably on women. Gain, loss, pleasure, pain, praise, blame, honor, ill repute. About 800 years ago, Dogen was living in a highly stratified society. But the places of practice he established and the dharma he conveyed knew nothing about division. Here's a section on practicing and realizing from his chapter, Receiving the Marrow While Bowing. It's addressed to us, all of us. Dogen writes, practice diligently in the endeavor of the way, casting off myriad conditions without sparing a moment. Practice with heart, practice with beyond heart, practice even with half a heart. Thus, look to trees and rocks, fields and villages to expound the dharma. Ask pillars about dharma and investigate with walls. If such people are deeply determined to throw their body and mind wholeheartedly into Buddha Dharma, Buddha Dharma takes pity on them without fail. Dharma to Dharma. He goes on, foolish humans and devas, those are heavenly beings, still have the capacity to feel the truth. How should the authentic Dharma of all Buddhas not have compassion to respond to sincere hearts? Even mud, rocks, sand, and pebbles have hearts to be affected by sincerity. Both men and women attain the way. You should honor attainment of the way. Do not discriminate between men and women. This is the most wondrous principle of the Buddha way. That most wondrous principle. Thoroughgoing equality. Each one unique and unrepeatable. Each one, all of it. Dogen goes on. Even 7-year-old girls who practice Buddha Dharma and express Buddha Dharma are guiding teachers of the 4 types of disciples. That's monks, nuns, laymen, laywomen. They are compassionate parents of sentient beings. In another essay, Dogen references a vow of the Buddha. May women who want to leave the household in my Dharma study the way and receive the great precepts, accomplish their wishes. Until this is achieved, I will not be fully awakened. How many times I've seen Yamararion Roshi look up from a talk, look all around the room, and say, until each one of you is awake, I cannot be fully awake. It's like I don't have an arm. One body, one awakening. Actually, that's what this is right now. This one body. Kongshi was born by the name Weiju into a family of stature. Her father was a scholar, an official, and an archivist. So their home was full of books, many of them Buddhist sutras and stories of the masters. She and her brother went to good schools, and she excelled. Weiju was spiritually inclined. She asks her parents to allow her to be ordained as a child, but they declined. There was some unrest during this era, sort of getting toward the end of the Song dynasty, and Buddhist monasticism was a little unsettled, may have felt unsafe. At any rate, no. Instead, at the age that was considered fitting, her father arranged a match, auspicious match, with the prime minister's grandson. Interesting note that this made her the older sister-in-law of Miao Zhang, I've spoken about before, a renowned nun and teacher of this time. There were so many women. After a few years, it was clear that this marriage was an unhappy match. So Weiju left. Rather than shaming her with a divorce, which actually wouldn't have altered his lifestyle anyway, her husband simply let her go. She returned to her parents, and again, she asked to be ordained as a nun. And again, her father said no. She would stay and care for them, all the while quietly studying, obeying the precepts, and practicing, sitting still, following her breath. There's a record that during this time, Weiju Kongshi read a brief instruction on meditation called Contemplation of the Dharma. It made a strong impression. You can hear it in her own writing. Here's the passage. One includes all and enters all. All includes one and enters one. One includes one and enters one. All includes all and enters all. They interpenetrate one another without any obstruction. Sounds like that wonderful line from the Heart Sutra. No hindrance of mind, therefore no fear. And then it goes on, far beyond all such delusion, nirvana is already here. Pure, innocent, empty, infinite, absolute capacity. Here, it's this, all of it. No hindrance of mind. Where could there be anything to hinder anything? Kongshi gradually came to see the world turning in total interpenetration. So here's one of her poems. Matter and self are wholly lacking in discrepancy, identical to the likeness of countless mirrors. To deliver host and companion in shining brilliance, penetrate the true lineage with clever awareness. A comprehensive corpus embraces manifold dharma, interlocked with a net of Indra. One after another, inexhaustible abodes. To stir or be still is entirely one and the same. You can sense her deep into this practice, pointing to it. Maybe not fully there. In her story, it's not yet, but clearly pointing. This net of Indra, a gem at each node, reflecting every other gem, this one entirety. It's called to mind for me a poem sent some time ago by a student. I received these gifts with gratitude. I'd just like to share. In stillness that is not still, in light that is not light, in darkness that is not dark, wholeness unknown to itself sits alone, like moonlight on water, in silence that is not silent. A comprehensive corpus. To stir or be still is entirely one and the same. When her parents died, Kongshi asked her brother's permission to be ordained as a nun. He had an important job now and was moving to a big city. She would accompany him and serve him, as was her filial duty. Kongshi was troubled, sad, but she understood that her life was not just her own, and not only because she was a woman. Sally Tisdale has a nice chapter on this in her book about women in Zen, a little bit of her reflection in Kongshi's voice. My life is the child of beings beyond counting. And then Tisdale writes, Kongshi thought, as she packed her belongings for the trip. But her chest felt as though it had been cracked open with an axe. She tried to tell herself not to fret, that everything would fit together, that this was just another unopened gift. Think of that freight and the track. This was just another unopened gift. And in the cracks of her sorrow, there was a glimmer of peace. As she contemplated the indescribable web of being, she saw that it was just a single step to gratitude. And from there, one more step to giving everything away. According to one record, in the year 1111, Kongshi's brother died. She held his memorial service, packed his belongings, and then considered what to do. He had left her enough financial resources. She was free. All her life, she had wanted to be ordained, to practice and study, to awaken. Now putting on robes didn't seem to matter. What difference would it make to leave the ordinary world? Was that really necessary? Kongshi was staying near the monastery of the Rinzai master Sixin Wuxin, a name meaning dead mind. Empty room meets dead mind. He's known for his serene nature, just placid. She went to hear a talk of Sixin and asked permission to come again. He said, "You are already awake." He said this to all of his students there. You are already awake. You just don't know it yet. So Sixin saw Kongshi's sincerity and invited her to come every day. Once he asks her, "As for that which a single rainfall nurtures, roots and shoots are different. What comes from the earth where there isn't sun or shade?" Sounds like a koan. That single fall of rain, that dharma pouring down on everything the same, leading to endless roots, each different. What a marvel that flowers come from dirt. Kongshi answered, 5 petals of a single blossom come. She probably is thinking of the 5 houses of sin. Another afternoon, Sixin asks Kongshi, "What wall will you face day and night when you settle down and get on with your pursuit?" "Oh, master," she answered quite directly, "you are good at borrowing eyebrows." Like, "This woman messes up the order," he said at last, and he hit her, and she bowed. Kongshi, it is said that she was filled with gratitude for Sixen's efforts on her behalf. And she composed a poem of appreciation for him. Her poem: "His dead mind is still thriving, the source of a luminous deep. He sees colors with his ears. He hears sounds with his eyes. And the peasant understands, while the sages remain ignorant. Behind one is rich, ahead one is poor. He benefits all beings, frees all things by turning a bit of mud into gold. No colors can make his image, which lives neither in the past or the present time." All of these themes, this great equality, turning mud into gold. It is gold. And the empty room. So she gives this poem to Sixen, and in response, he writes a poem, kind of a challenge for her. She takes it, studies it, sits with it, carries it with her. One day, walking up the path to the monastery, some last little bit just falls. She awakens. When that last little bit falls, what really falls is you, God, awake. This is how Tisdale describes it. There it was, everything, the whole view right now, an interpenetrating tapestry of atoms and seeds, her feet, desire and pain, her parents' ashes, her brother's opinions, the building she approached, her mind, her teacher's mind, the stone path and the moss along its edge, her sore feet, her broken heart, the dead men frozen in the city's doorways, the crowd of crows complaining from a cypress tree, everything, and at once, nothing. A tiny wave lost on the sea. A little cloud gone in the spring sun. A leaf blown by. A spark, a dream, a light, a shadow. Her many broken views, seeing only part of things, seeing only this and not being able to see that. This was also part of it, just as everything was broken and gone at exactly the same time and in exactly the same way and for exactly the same reason. Tisdale writes, every atom and seed and mind was essential, eternal, joyous, and pure. That's a line from the Kanzeon Sutra. So Kongshi goes straight back to Sixen's room and says to him, I make the universe. I unmake the universe. Making, unmaking. And then she recites this verse. Self and other are never different. The many things in the world are just reflections, bright, full, holding both principle and practice, completely experienced, filled with the absolute. Every single thing holds all things. All things are connected to all things. This continues layer upon layer without end, moving, still, it never stops, this interpenetration. That's one aspect of this world. It's so because, if you could even use that word, it's empty. Totally empty. And yet, here we are. Computer, cushion, light, sound outside. All of it. Every single thing. All of it. Empty room. Years ago, at one of those early teachers' gatherings, there was a long-time German teacher who was invited to give one of the Teisho, one of the Dharma talks. She'd been there, every year, year after year. She was the generation before me, not by age, but experience. And so while I'd been around her every year, she was soft-spoken and often quiet. Lovely woman. And in this talk she gave, she described her own kensho, her first, she just said her kensho. She had been at a sesshin, at a retreat, 7 days, deep, deep practice, just sitting with mu. And at the end, packed up, drove home, went upstairs to her apartment, familiar route. She opened the door to her apartment, and it was completely empty. Suddenly, completely empty. She saw it, not burgled. Every last concept stolen away. Empty, yet everything functioning. After her awakening, Sixen sent Kongshi away. Instead of entering a convent, she went to a nearby monastery and built a bathhouse just outside its walls. She hung a pot over the door to signal this is a bathhouse. She hung a painting of Ling Zhao and Layman Pang, those two famous lay masters, a husband and wife, on the wall. And on the door, she wrote this poem. If nothing truly exists, what are you bathing? Where could even the slightest bit of dust come from? If you say one sentence worth hearing, you may enter the bath. The ancient teachers can only scrub your back. How can I clarify your mind? If you want to be free from dust, sweat with every part of you. Perhaps water washes away dirt. But do you understand that water is also dirty? Even if you see no difference between the water and the dirt, it all must be washed completely away when you enter here. Wash away the dirt. Wash away the water. Let it all go. Already gone. Enter here. It's said that monks and lay people came to bathe, but nobody really knew who this old woman was. She scrubbed their backs, washed their towels, and would just slip in bits of teaching whenever she could. Here's one more poem. She would write them on the walls. The world is nothing but dust and suchness. Up and down, forward and backward, everything is marked by Buddha. You could say you, or you could say Mo. What is a wave but water? But water isn't just the waves. Even when the whole sea is wild, it is still just the sea. Remember that in our sitting. Even when it's wild, it's still just sitting. In her old age, Kongshi closes the bathhouse, moves to a convent, and then something of an afterthought. She gets ordained. It's said that each night she folded her robes with care, just as she had folded the bathhouse towels. That love is all there is all we know of love. It is enough. The freight should be proportioned to the groove. You are that freight. You are that groove. Nothing but love. So with gratitude, that last step before giving everything away, let's continue our practice. Thank you.